like, yeah, and I found it for like $22. I'm just like, yep, bye.
Well, I think we'll just go into this in with the reviews in mind, and hope that people understand that we didn't really think we were going to be recording, so we didn't really prepare any topics. So
yeah,
and by people, I mean like if I'm sure most people will be like, "What? I thought they said they weren't going to record," when it pops up in their feed. But
we could just do like how is the board gaming year shaping up, kind of like pre-convention season. Because we're kind of still pre-convention season, and like several big Kickstarters have started off and are funding or funded, and there's a few things to talk about there, and that'd be an easy one, right?
Yeah, just kind of a little bit of an update, a quick update on what stuff has been catching our eyes and whatnot.
Yeah,
sounds cool to me. All right, well, here we go then. 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sound. I'm joined tonight by Andrew Dennison and Trent Ham, both who did not really have to be here. So thank you guys for being here so much, because tonight's episode is almost by itself a huge surprise and a bonus episode of sorts, because I was planning on being gone. As announced on the last episode, I was planning on being gone at tennis. Weather ended up canceling it. And so we're able to record. And for that reason, you won't be getting a topic tonight. It'll just be kind of a short bunch of reviews and then a bit of an update on the state of gaming, which, where we're at here in the end of Q1 of 2019. Anyway, let me actually let you guys talk. By the way, it's good to hear from you guys. Andy, Trent, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
All
I'm
right.
just sitting around. Actually, no, the dog woke me up at like 5 a.m. I'm like, oh, I'll go to bed early tonight. Then Joe was like, hey, I could record. I'm like, all right, whatever. They'll do that.
So if Andy passes out, we know it was because the dog woke him up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, actually, I kind of got a second wind. I'm doing pretty good now. So, but if I like suddenly head first into the keyboard, I was wrong on
that. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that, I think we'll have some stuff to keep you awake. I don't know. The game that you're going to talk about should hopefully help out with that. Before we get started, first, thanks to our sponsor, Game Surplus. Check them out at GameSurplus.com. Bringing the world of board games to you. Just had a big box of games shipped, and you will hear about. Let's see here. Yeah, you'll be hearing about one of those games in tonight's review section, and there's a few more yet to come. So anyway. Check them out at GameSurplus.com, and there's a large selection of board games. A pretty fair prices on all of them. A lot of times you can find them cheaper there than anywhere else. And tell them the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly sent you in the comments when you send your order. Thanks to Carmen and Elaine there. Yeah. Also, check out, if you're ever in the market for a new audio podcast, check out our cardboard cohorts in the Bridge City Board Gamers, Cardboard in the Classroom, and the recently released Cardboard Conjecture, which covered that new Martin Wallace game, what is it called? Oh my good, Wildlands, right? Wildlands. And they had another game they talked about, but check out their most recent episode. They have opinions that are based on incomplete information. So that's how they sell themselves. So you can know that they will be probably the closest thing to an honest podcast you can find that gives opinions and doesn't just try to say, these are my opinions and this is why they're right. And actually it accepts the fact that opinions can, everybody's experiences might differ. So check that out, Cardboard in the Classroom and Cardboard Conjecture from the Bridge City Board Gamers. You can find them on iTunes, as well as whatever, Norm does a great job releasing on Stitcher, and he'll probably be available more places than this podcast. Yeah. Probably better, just in general, better managed. And the only person that can say that would be the person putting it out, and I know that I have my faults. So you can actually come into the comment section here in our live chat and tell me all of my faults. Okay. Which actually...
Yeah. Oh, crap. I tried posting them, and it said I was posting too many that quickly.
Oh, darn it. Oh, really, it looks like that's a lot of people got hit with that here. The thing, yeah, you unfortunately can only send 200 character posts, and you can only post once every what is it, like 10, 20 seconds. So yeah, it looks like everybody's dealing with, there's a lot coming in right here. Anyway, it's great to see Carmen, Dean, Jerry, and none of you could plan on this. I mean, this is something that wasn't even going to happen until a few minutes ago. So I'm glad that there were some people that have come to support us here in this little bonus episode. And I think we'll be ready to now get it rolling. And Andy, why don't you kick it off, since we can start with that excitement, that jolt of energy that it sounds like is going to be coming from you with today's review of a very old game that I think is like at least a decade old.
Yeah, it's I believe 2009 is the release date on it. So anyway, this is going to be more of an initial thoughts, because one thing that'll become pretty clear as I talk about this game is that it's going to take more than one play to have any freaking clue whatever I'm doing with it. But I managed to pick up a copy of Masters of Venice. I'd heard about this game, good couple of years ago from Heavy Cardboard. They did a podcast review of it. And I'd heard that they were going to be live streaming it soon. And I know sometimes, like, when they stream an economic game, that economic game could become impossible to find. So I wasn't really in the market for looking for new games, but I'm just like, whatever. I'll see what the price is. And weirdly enough, like, Amazon was pretty high, but Walmart.com had it for $22, which was weird. So I'm like, why not? $22. That's So I got a hold of it, managed to get it played last weekend. So Masters of Venice is, it kind of looks like it's going to be one of those trading in the Mediterranean sort of Euro games. No, this is a super economic game. There's different stores where you track share prices, goods you're going to buy and sell. Prices can change based on how the cubes come out or how they're sold back. You can fulfill guild orders for points. Ultimately, like, all of your money and everything converts to points in the end, which the usual conversion being for every like $100, you get a point for it. So you can go to these different areas on the board. Some are called shared actions, where when you go to it, whoever chose that area, they go first, but then everybody else gets a chance to do it as well. There's certain areas of the board where only the people that go there can do it. And it's kind of interesting because you choose where you're going as a simultaneous action selection. So you got these like little dials for each player. And on that dial is a list of the different spots, as well as like a bidding track, because you're going to bid to see turn order and all that. But like, there's all this interconnectedness going on, because not only are you bidding for turn order, but depending on how you bid for turn order, you can modify the orders up and down, because each company has a set number of orders. It can only accept that many cubes. And so that allows you to manipulate that area, and it's one of the few ways to do it. Then you basically move to your spots, you go through the motions, do all the actions. There's a stock buying area, because each sort of like shop has stocks in it, and those can pay out dividends, kind of like, basically, I think in a Euro game, only this and City of the Big Shoulders have I ever experienced a stock market like, basically, I think a stock market should run in a board game, where there's shares to buy and they pay money. You can sell them, you can buy them, so on and so on. There's guild orders to fulfill that will give you a lot of points as you rack up the number of them. However, when you fulfill guild orders, even though it gives you points, it may or may not give you money. You get a little bit of a choice in there. You can basically do things to like tank stock values, or you can do up the stock value and do a split and get victory points. There's a lot going on economically with this game. Throw all that together as an economic game, and like the Euro component is you have special player powers you can get. So based on your bid order, so whoever bid first gets to pick one, and the next person the next one. Whoever bid the least gets a special one called the gondolier. And they basically go around the turn track, hoovering up these little tiles that they can use to modify things in the game. And they get a one-time use special power where they can go first, period. which is kind of cool. So even though they're like last in turn order for like 3 rounds, at some point in a critical time, they can just flip their gondolier tile and go, I'm going before the first player right now. And that could potentially be used in a pretty big way. There is a lot of levers to pull in this game. Things were starting to click at probably about 2/3 of the way through the first game for me, a little bit. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can go about manipulating the different levers and tweaks and all of that to really try to get the victory out on it. I'm not sure if there's really a dominant strategy or not. I don't know. It's a really solid economic game. I think our first game of it took probably 2.5 hours. I think once everyone kind of smooths out and you know what you're doing, you could get that down sub 2 hours. The box time lists 90 minutes. I think that's probably realistic if you have experienced players, but not in your first couple plays for sure. The one thing I would recommend to people is be aware that this is a very fiddly game. Like, they use these peg boards to track prices and share values, and like those pegs are constantly moving up and down. So everyone needs to kind of be paying attention. You really need to spread these peg boards out among the different players so that, you know, each person's keeping track of 1 or 2 just to speed things along. So it's not a game where you can kind of take your move and then veg out and then come back to it. You really got to be paying attention to what's going on, both mechanically and within it, because kind of how you go about winning this game feels very opaque to me. Like you really got to play it a few times for things to come in. But yeah, the only criticisms I would say I could weigh against it would be it's very fiddly. So if moving pegs around a lot's going to bug the crap out of you, maybe stay away from it. The other thing that I could say that's problematic about it is, in the game as it comes, there are no player aids. I went, of course, me being me with print and play, went to BGG, immediately printed off player aids. But those are critical. So if you do get this game, go to BGG, print off the player aids. It will make your lives much, much easier. I even actually found out there's an expansion, so I purchased that, which is just more character tiles to kind of make the game a little bit more variable. And so, yeah, throwing those in the game with this is a gem of an auction game, discounting the fiddliness or even including that within it. I guess I never really pursued it for a while because I didn't know how good it would be. And once I played it, I'm like, yeah, this is never leaving my collection. This is an awesome economic game. There's not too many that gives you more levers and tools to play with to try to beat out your opponents. So that's kind of my thoughts on Master of Venice. Trent played that with me. So what were your kind of thoughts there, Trent?
Very similar. This is really it felt to me that it's a simultaneous action selection game mixed with an economic game. Mm-hmm. This really is. It's one of those games with a lot of levers, but once it gets going, it all makes sense. It's not like a matter of not knowing the rules of the game. It's not a complicated game once you get going. It's figuring out what to do with the levers you've got, and that's really not clear at first at all. Like, how do I manipulate this into having anything at the end of the game? Plus, it's really easy for the other players to mess with what you're doing. This is a high interaction game. If you like games of multiplayer solitaire, don't even bother. Just don't. No. Strangely, this is the thing I kept thinking about after I was playing, is it kind of in some ways reminded me of Container. And the reason I say that is it felt very sandboxy. Like you could kind of do your own thing in it, and you're kind of manipulating a little bit a piece of the shared market, but other people are in there manipulating it as well, and that's the same thing that's going on in Container. So in that way, I mean, that's the kind of game you should be expecting when you pick this up. If you played something like Container or Turin Market or anything where it's kind of a wide open economic game, that's what this is. Except this one feels like there's a ton of levers to pull. And those levers turn a lot of gears, and you don't always see what they're doing. And other people are pulling their levers at the same time. And if that sounds like your kind of thing, you're going to love this. If this sounds horrible to you, you're not going to love this. That's just how this is. This is what it is. And yeah, I loved it. I went and immediately hunted online for it and found a copy for under $20, and boom, I have it. Because I loved it about as much as Andy did. I thought it was great. So
it pulls your levers then.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Well, even it's so much player action in it that you buy cubes from the area called the docks, right? And in most games, they have like a cleanup phase where you refill the docks and all that kind of thing, right? Nope, not here. The only way the docks get more cubes is if somebody goes to the shipping office, which could potentially be a subpar action that you're just filling up cubes for other people. But the fun of it is it doesn't just like randomly put out the cubes. You get to draw 4 cubes and then put 1 in each dock as you see fit. So you could potentially set yourself up to do some really funky stuff with it too.
And there's so much stuff you can do. Like Andy kind of mentioned this, but I thought this is something we didn't really get into, but I think experienced players would when they got a good grasp on the game, and it seems horrendously cruel, is when you're doing the turn order bidding. Okay, so everybody can bid in increments of 5 up to like 60 or 70 or something, a rather large number. And then after you bid, it doesn't just set the turn order. It lets you your bid also manipulates one of the businesses out there and can basically say you're not going to be functional for a while. You can use your bid to basically say this company will no longer accept orders or will only accept 1 or 2 orders this round. And someone else who's planning on selling that type of good is just, you're out of luck. And you can do that in this game, or you can use it to set it yourself up. Or, I mean, it's got a lot of levers, and I think it can be. I saw meanness in the game we were playing, and we were all being pretty friendly because we were losing. We were learning the game. And I saw meanness in that game, and I know that there's tools in there to be a lot meaner than we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to be, I mean, it's like Container, or like some of the stuff you can do with an experienced player on the map, a food chain magnet, that type of stuff, where you can really just destroy the market.
Yeah, like somebody could buy like 3 shares, and then you could be like, oh, good, you jacked up the value. I'm going to sell my 3. And then you lose like, oh, God, it's awful. Yeah, because the way the stock shares work is no matter how many shares are bought of a company or a shop, it only goes up by 1. So if I buy 3 shares of the blacksmith only goes up by 1.
It goes up like 55 to 60 or 70 to 75.
But if anybody sells shares of blacksmith, it goes down by 2 per share. Yeah. It's rough.
Oof.
So there's a lot of meanness in this game. That's not an exaggeration of that.
Maybe it's a game that was released kind of before its time, before there was really.
It kind of feels like it, yeah.
Before there was more of a collected community of economic gamers that would support this type of a game, beyond, like a niche publisher.
Well, it kind of I think probably that's part of it, because it was from R&R Games, and they're like not an unknown company. But I think
I don't know what it was like though 10 years ago. I mean, I'm sure
they weren't a big name then. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
this one completely missed me, and I was definitely in the hobby at the time. I wasn't even aware of it. So
yeah, well, and it looks like just your standard sort of Renaissance Euro. If you look at the box and stuff, it's only when you kind of start playing it that you're like, there's like an element or 2 of a Euro game in here, but it's a pretty nasty economic game. Like. This is much closer to, say, like the feeling of an 18xx game, economic game in the sort of Euro form, in a way, kind of that economic, shares and stock market aspect of it. Gotcha. Yeah, but no, it's a really good game. Yeah, this one, it's staying in the collection for sure. I've literally been thinking about it several times a day, every day since last Sunday.
Wow. It's pretty intense, Andy. That's a lot of thinking about it.
No, it is. It's like, what if I did this? No, what if I did this? What if I wait? Nobody even went there. What would that do?
Just make sure you keep your eye on the things. Make sure you just keep taking showers and eating meals.
I did that. Yeah, I don't miss meals. It's fine.
I'm glad to hear that you guys have enjoyed it so much. It sounds like there's an expansion too, to start maybe exploring once you've got a little bit more about the base game understood.
Well, in the expansion is just extra player, special power tiles.
Okay.
And so like it just adds variability really to the setup. So, okay. You just take all 10, shuffle them up, draw 5, go with it.
Okay. Well, cool. All right. Well, that's Masters of Venice. So check it out. Not Merchant of Venus, which was confusing to me seeing the box, but Masters of Venice from R&R Games in 2009, actually designed by Frank Di Lorenzo. And yeah, it definitely has something to pick into, it sounds like. So check that one out. Now, I'll give a quick little review of a fairly small game. This is the dice game to the really light filler card game named Herbaceous. I realized that I own the entire catalog of games from this publishing company, Pencil First Games, and that is it only takes 3. But I have Herbaceous, I have Sunset Over Water, and I now have Herbaceous Sprouts. These are games that are all designed, at least in part, by Steve Finn of Dr. Finn Games, sort of the master of the filler. And I would say that they are all, specifically the Herbaceous games are very focused on light, easy-to-teach rules, ones that will be easy to grok on the first game for new players, and non-gamers as well. They're also beautiful. They have watercolor drawings by Beth Sobel. Just absolutely gorgeous game. So Herbaceous Sprouts is the dice game, and it follows the same pattern of Herbaceous in that there are going to be cards made available. In this case, they're actually dice that represent different herbs and flowers. And in Herbaceous, it was pretty much you had specific. I think the herbs were actually like you had like an herb pot, and then most of the cards in the game were like flowers of sorts. And you had different values of like herbs that could only be specifically planted in an herb pot, whereas the rest of the things in the game, actually, no, I forget what's herbs and what's flowers. Anyway, there was most of the cards are planted in like essentially set collection. So you've got 3 different types of set collection. That's collecting the same card, collecting sets of different cards, and then collecting pairs of the same card. And there's 1/4 like sort of category where it can only take specific types of cards that can only be used towards that category. And it uses the exact same format in both the Sprouts dice game as well as in the card game. In the card game, you're drawing cards off of the top of the deck, and it's kind of like Biblios Light in that you'll draw 1 card and then have to choose whether or not you want to keep that card for yourself or make it available towards the public. And then those public cards eventually will get taken by players as they choose to pot their plants. And in Herbaceous Sprouts, that format is not as tense, because instead of it being that you're really interacting with other players, because this common pool of cards is like, as it grows and as it gets, cards get potted from there. The game really does feel like a Biblios Light in that it's very interactive. And what cards end up going in what spots is important. It's a very simple decision. 1 for me, 1 for everyone else. But there's a lot of mileage there. Here in Herbaceous Sprouts, it's a dice drafting game in which you're going to start the game by drawing cards, and then some of those cards will have slots for dice. You roll dice, you put the dice on the cards, and there are 4 different types of dice here, and most of those dice are the same, meaning 5 faces on all the dice are equal. But the different colors of dice, basically that 6th face is a different dice for the pink dice, where it's like a reroll, yellow dice, where it's specifically needed to pot certain plants, blue dice, it is a wild die, and then the green dice have the specific only 1 in 6 option of flowers, which can only be planted in the one special area of the garden. You'll be able to draft cards, which then have dice as well as other special abilities on them. You'll be able to plant as many things as you want to or can in a public garden now, but now the garden is the public thing in this one. But it's a little bit less, it's less interactive because you're like, as you're potting plants, like you can pot as many things, you can plant as many things in the garden as you have cards for. And you're just able to do this all on your turn. And for that reason, it's an easier game to teach people. It's more of like multiplayer solitaire. But for that reason, it doesn't have the tension that Herbaceous has. And I really loved Herbaceous for how much tension you got out of this so simple structure. So easy, so fast, so simple, but tense. It's like the simplest game I can imagine that level of tension at. And so Herbaceous Sprouts lacks that tension. And one like component issue, these games are beautiful. They're so gorgeous. And the artwork in this game is fantastic. However, I believe they use like an inkjet printer to print onto the dice. And for that reason, it's really blotchy, kind of sticks out. It seems pixelated. It advertises gorgeous dice on the back of the box, but really they aren't. Like, it's gorgeous artwork that's been poorly transferred onto dice, and it does not, it just does not meet the level of quality that I would expect, having purchased and played Herbaceous and Sunset Over Water and just absolutely adored those games. So this is kind of a bit of a lower standard. It's the bar here. I think that the game itself is interesting. It's fine. It's a little bit less tense. And for that reason, doesn't quite captivate me. But it's very clean. It works very well. And if you were looking for something that's like multiplayer solitaire, also beautiful art, and you're okay with just, like kind of squinting when you look at the dice and saying, okay, well, that matches that. It's not as clear, but you're okay with going past that. Then I would say, it's just fine. I think that it works really well. And there's a lot to like here. I do think that every bit of the components here and all the artwork is great except for those dice. So it is a dice game, so it's a pretty big thing to mess up. But that's my thoughts on Herbaceous Sprouts. Have you guys played any of the games I mentioned? Herbaceous, Pencil Over Water. Yeah, that's a pretty fantastic game, actually. Pencil Over Water, but Sunset Over Water is the one I was talking about, and they're from Pencil First Games. Sunset Over Water is like a really just like that sort of micro filler game that's really cool. It's simple set collection, gorgeous artwork, landscapes. But Herbaceous to me is the one where, Andy, if you're looking for a super filler, I think Herbaceous might at least have something there. It's similar to Biblios, but it doesn't have the auctions. It's just a much simpler game. Like, just imagine if Biblios could be done in like 15 minutes as opposed to the 45-minute or half-hour game that it is. So anyway, that's all I have to say about it. Trent, have you experienced any of these games? I
played Herbaceous. It's fine. I played it with you, I believe.
Yeah.
It's fine. It felt very... It didn't feel like... definitely was in the filler category, but I gotta say the art was beautiful. I'm kind of sad to hear the low printing quality of the expansion, because it sounds like the art used was great. And it'd be kind of cool if they had printed it well.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same art, but yeah.
But is it like that one game that had the dice that melted?
I do not believe so. No, I haven't had anything. But the time will tell, I guess. I do actually, for what it's worth, I plan on kind of hanging on to it because it's more multiplayer solitaire, but it does a really clean dice drafting card drafting. But then there's dice on those cards, so it does these things really cleanly, easy to understand. I could see using it to introduce people. Plus, I just guess I really like the themes and just maybe I'm just squarely into the target here for wanting these types of games that Pencil First Games is coming out with. Cool. And now to breathe some fire down our throats.
Okay. All right.
After the game that's about potting plants. Now, Trent, you get to really come in with the theme punch, the throat punch of theme.
Yeah, this is definitely a much more thematic game. I'm going to talk about Dragonfire, which is a deck building game. It's definitely campaign based. I'd say it's very lightly legacy based. It's a co-op deck building game. It plays 1 to 6 players, honestly, but you can play at any player count in that range. And where should I start with this? It's probably about as simple in terms of deck building as a co-op deck builder probably could be. If you're looking for something that's like I'm trying to think of like Aeon's End. There's a much heavier cooperative deck builder than Dragonfire is. And Dragonfire, essentially what you have is you have a starting deck. Everybody's is a little bit different. It usually consists of around 7 or 8 cards. They're all very basic. All they do is they produce a symbol, and that's all they do. And then everybody is dealt a threat card. And this changes a little bit depending on the specific scenario you're playing, because the different scenarios essentially have a different deck of threat cards that is given to you. Everybody's given a threat card. Depending on the scenario, there's also sometimes an environmental effect. These threat cards, for the most part, they just have a list of symbols on them. So like it might be like has a red symbol and then the green symbol and then a 3, which means 3 of any symbol, and so on down it. And then it also has a little indication of how much damage it's going to do to you each round. You have a certain number of hit points. So everybody has one of these. On your turn, you can play your cards to try to match the symbols that are on the cards, going top to bottom. So I have a red on top, then a green, then a blue, then a 3, then a green, or whatever. And so you'd have to play a red, and then a green, and then a blue. Or you could do it to someone else's guy if he's about to die because he's running out of hit points. You could attack the guy on someone else. Or however you feel like doing it. When a character dies, or when an enemy dies, means you've taken care of all of those symbols. And you keep track of this from turn to turn by putting a little marker on which symbols you've taken care of. But anyway, as soon as you've taken care of all the symbols on a guy, he dies, he gives a gold reward to everybody in the party. And then at the end of your turn, you draw 2 cards. If you need more than 2 cards, if you need more cards, you only have 1 or 0 in your deck. You shuffle up your discard of all the cards you've been using and keep drawing off the top. Then you use the coins you've accumulated to buy a card from the market, like every other deck building game. In this case, the cards go straight into your hand. And that's essentially all you do. Everything else in this game is a variation on that. Like there's different scenario effects. There's different random effects each round in some scenarios. It really depends on what's going on. What's legacy about this is you can play this in the campaign mode, whereas scenario after scenario, the game gradually gets harder, with harder people to fight against and nastier scenario effects and so on. But the reward you get is each scenario you defeat, you earn a little bit of experience points. You can use those experience points to add stuff to your character sheet, and that's the legacy part. You actually can use stickers that are in the box to modify your character sheet. This gives you special abilities, and they're usually along the line of spend a coin to draw a card on your turn, or all sorts of various things are going on. It also adds the abilities to buy better cards for your starting deck right off the bat. So each time at the end of a game of this, you reset to your generic starting deck. But if you've been playing this legacy style or campaign style for a while, your starting deck's a little better, or a little better, or a little better. I don't believe there's any way to get rid of the crappy starting cards, but you can definitely start with much better ones in your deck in addition. And that's basically Dragonfire. It's light. I never feel like the game, and I played this a fair amount, I never feel like the game's really pushing you that hard. I feel like it's more trying to tell a story, but I don't feel like deck building is the best environment with which to tell a story, at least with just this bare bones of elements of a deck building. This just feels like you're playing multiplayer Ascension against the central bad guy, is honestly what I feel like when I'm playing it. And that's not bad. But if you want any sort of depth to a game, this is not where you're going to find it. This is one to sit around like where you're mostly chit-chatting with people and not really paying attention to the game, which is mostly what most of us that were playing the game were doing. Most of the decisions were not too difficult. It was usually like maybe there was 2 threats to go after that made any sense at all, and usually it was really obvious which of those 2 you should go after. It was really clear where you should be putting your cards almost all the time. And then sometimes there'd be a random effect that would make things a little bit more difficult, but you never really had to. I mean, the most you're communicating is being like, okay, so you're going to take care of this next turn? Okay, then I'll do this turn. And that was it. I like it. It's very, very light. it's probably lighter than I normally like to play at this point in my gaming tastes. If I'm playing a game this light, it's usually with someone who's a very, very much a gateway gamer, and it's light. I keep coming back to that word because that's what this is. It's very light. It's about as light as I can imagine a co-op deck building game being. Now, having said that, this is the bizarre part. As light as the game feels, the rulebook is atrocious. The rulebook is an atrocity against all that is good in the world. A game this simple should not have that many rules questions. Like, I don't even know how this is possible that this rulebook was written that badly. But, like, I kept looking at it and I was thinking, I mean, this was edited in a Word document in a day and pasted into a PageMaker format, and someone hit print. This really needs some editing, man. That needs serious editing on this rulebook. Catalyst games, you got to get better at your rulebooks, man. This is not good for a game as relatively simple as Dragonfire is. Not good. I mean, there'd be a keyword on a card, and you wouldn't know where to find it in the rulebook. Mm-hmm. Like, you look at them, but you think maybe there'd be a glossary of keywords. Nope. Maybe it's in this section about individual cards. Nope. It's written in the middle of a paragraph somewhere where it's bolded, and it might be in the relevant place, and it might not be. Honestly, the first two games I was playing of this, we spent more time leafing through the rulebook looking for like how something works than playing the game. It wasn't like it was complicated. We just wanted to do it right, because sometimes obvious things weren't clear on the cards. Like, well, what does that mean? And then you spend 10 minutes looking at the bad rulebook. But my biggest complaint about this game is I accept that it was light and it's perfectly fine for what it is. But that rulebook, man, not good. Not good.
To put it in perspective, I just checked BGG. The rules forum has 472 entries.
On Dragonfire, I'm not surprised a bit. I was not kidding when I was saying it was bad.
Wow.
I mean, and the thing is, the game is pretty light. It really is.
Yeah, yeah. You said it.
Mm-hmm. There's more in that. There's more in rules than there is in general. I mean, in just terms of general people randomly posting stuff, there's more rules questions than that.
That's hilarious.
Dude, that's not good.
So there's literally more text of rules questions than there was rules.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I feel like I'm kind of hammering on the game a little bit. I'm not trying to do that. It's a perfectly good light role deck building game. If you like Ascension and you want to play that in a co-op form, or you and your buddies are building decks to fight against a general bad guy or a general scenario and trying to kill bad guys together, it's great for that. It's very light. It's way lighter than Thunderstone Quest. It's way lighter than like Aeon's End, which is my favorite co-op deck builder, because I'm not really counting Mage Knight as a co-op deck builder. Otherwise, probably Mage Knight would be. But those games are way, way, way heavier than this. Those are the ones that I like. This one's very, very light, and if you take it for what it is, it's very fine. My only real serious complaint is the rulebook. And I mean, it's not me. There's 472 rules questions on Board Game Geek, which is insane for the simplicity of this game. And I think that I would probably have had a more positive review if the rulebook had been written well. And I think that was part of how we got so chatty when I was playing it, is because someone was looking through the rulebook for answers, and so we started chatting about whatever. And I mean, the game is fine, and I think it's a good light deck builder. But yeah, that's Dragonfire. I feel like I hammered it harder than I intended to, but there you go.
It's worth calling out, though, in this day and age. It's a 2017.
Yeah.
There's not much of an excuse for having that bad of a rule book.
Yep.
It's by Wizards of the Coast, too. So, I mean, like, they do have...
It's Catalyst.
Or Catalyst, I'm sorry, but it's D&D, right? It's like a D&D themed
Wizards
game.
of the Coast license a lot of their D&D stuff to Catalyst, like supplemental products and things like that.
Okay.
A lot of them they license to Catalyst now for whatever reason. I don't know why.
If you're going to get that, it's one of those... If you're going to get that license, like, do something with it. Don't, like, and I think that they're slapping the game together if, with the showing of that many rules questions. Like, if you've got a light game like that, it's disproportionate is what I'm seeing. But,
it's worth noting that this is a straight re-implementation of Shadowrun Crossfire. It's basically identically the same game, except with just enough rules tweaks that if you played Shadowrun Crossfire, things don't work quite like you expect a few times.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a good light deck building game, but the rulebook's really bad, and you're gonna have rules questions and expect to be searching the rules questions on BGG.
Okay.
All
Nice.
472 of them.
If that's your side hobby.
Notice I didn't say browse through. I said search. There's a key difference there.
Okay,
yeah.
yes. Side hobby of searching for rules questions during a game. Not something that I do.
I had another couple of games I want to review, but I'm going to wait on them. They need more plays. I've been playing them with my family. I've got one that I really, really, really like, and I'm sure I'm going to be reviewing in a week or two.
Nice.
Sure. Well, we will await that one, and hopefully in that week or two, I won't have this tennis meet from today get rescheduled. So, but I'll keep you all in the loop if that is going to happen. So, anyway, that would be the end of our reviews, and now time to discuss the state of gaming right now. Where have games headed since 2019 started? And I guess we can just kind of talk about in general where we are at with what we're finding interesting and stuff like that. And this is just kind of that topic to stand in to make this a full episode, I guess. If you guys have any better ideas here, post them in the comments.
Okay, I think I can start this. I have a few things I think I can say with this.
Okay.
So far, I have found that there are a lot of good things that are intriguing me that are coming down the pipe in 2019. Mm-hmm. I have enjoyed a lot of games that were new and new to me so far this year. I could easily already make a new to me in 2019 top 10 list that would be a list of games that I'm really intrigued to, at the very least, play a lot more. There are a lot of games coming down the pipe this year that I'm excited about. I mean, I could sit here and list them, but that would be kind of dull. But I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, I mean, just there's lots of things. I'm not going to get into a long list because that will just get dull. I'm just saying, I think 2019 is shaping up to be a pretty good year for gaming. Andy seems to be agreeing with me that there just seems like there's a lot of good stuff right at the moment. I will say for me personally, finishing the game room, this is where I'm recording my game, is I finished my game room in February, and it has vastly increased my time in which I'm playing games. Because prior to this, I didn't really have a place where I could set up a game and then play through it over the course of a couple days. Mm-hmm. Like, take a turn here, take a turn there, and see how the game works and play through it myself. Whether it's a solo game or like a 3 or 4 player game where I'm taking turns as all the players. I have been doing that a lot in this room. Like, there's almost always a game set up. And I'm loving that. That is fantastic. I've been really enjoying being able to do that. And just having a big table where I can just leave a game. And when I want to come downstairs and take a turn, I can. And it's all fine. And a lot of times the games will take up like a third or a half of the table if I slide them down. And then I can play a family game down at the other end with my family. And a lot of times both will fit on the table unless I'm playing an absurd table hog. And that's been great. I feel like I'm getting a lot more out of this hobby since this game room has been finished. I think that is going to get even more so as time goes on. And so I think having space to consistently play games is great. Who knew?
Yeah. Well, or just, I mean, that's the thing that keeps me from doing it more, is just having something set out conveniently that's not in the way, which is harder to do when you have cats.
We have, the only pet we have that could get into it is a little dog, and he has zero interest.
Yeah.
None. He's more interested in either taking naps or like chasing anything that's moving. He doesn't have any interest in like messing with stuff on the table unless he thinks there's food. I mean, if he thinks there's food up here, he might be, oh, what do we got? But if he doesn't smell anything, he's going to leave anything on the table alone. He hasn't touched my tabletop, so.
Yeah. No, I think it's been so far a really good start to the year. Like, I really went into this year, going like, okay, I have a lot of games that still need played. I'm not going to buy new ones for a while. And then, that didn't last long. A lot of them were Kickstarter stuff that I did because, we had Deluxe Age of Steam announced and kickstarted. Capstone's doing Irish Gauge, which is like, I've been looking for a copy I could get of that for like 2 years. So I'm like, I have to do that. Then you have like the Root expansions, which just made like an obscene amount of money. Like, what was it? It was like 1.7 million or something they pulled in on that Kickstarter. which I'm still slightly amazed at, because when I play Root, I'm just like, oh man, it's so interactive and nasty, and that has not been like the trend in a lot of modern games. That I've seen a lot of them have been kind of nice, friendly, and like Root's like, no, it's like
it's unapologetically gamey too. Like like here's a system of dice combat. And it's like dice combat, so it's exciting, but it's like weird, like it has to be explained. You have to sort of like think through it in a way that's not just, I come in with this many and this is my chance. It's like you can get up to this many options, and you like, I don't know. It's one of those where I see what you're saying, Andy. It seems like it's in more of a corner, but maybe that corner is something that is now considered mainstream.
Yeah, well, and I think like weirdly enough, like the little cutesy face on it, I think allows it to get away with more than it might otherwise if it had a more sort of serious theme on it. I think it draws
very, very refreshing though, because I think it's because of just the sort of design philosophy behind what Leader Games is doing. Because they captured, I think, the hearts of many with their game Vast, but it just wasn't something that you would want to keep hitting the table over and over. And I think that Root is kind of that same sort of design philosophy of bringing on, a full-time game designer. I think it's really paying off dividends for them. And so I think that, the addition of that and the inclusion,
freaking genius anyway. So
the inclusion of the artist throughout the development process is another thing that's exceptional that they're doing. And I think that just, if you have any interest in Root, you try it and you're like, wow, there's something here.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. That is it's something to be said that like, if you look at our tastes in games as a podcast, and how we all kind of like overlap a little bit, but we're all kind of in different places. Our gaming group is like, we're very reflective of our gaming group. We have a lot of different people there, with different tastes. And I have played more Root at game night on Sunday nights than any other game we have ever tried to get replayed. Like, unless you just hate interaction, and we have people that do, who are like, Root, no thanks. But unless you're just really against it, like a lot of people just love the game, and it's awesome. But I have a really good time with it, and so do others. But God, what else? I don't know. This wasn't this year. This was last year. Was the PAX Pamir second edition last year as a Kickstarter?
It was on Kickstarter last year. It hasn't been obviously shipped yet.
Yeah, because I think I got in on the pre-order when it was still up. But yeah, like having that in the pipeline coming. Yeah, I have so many games that are awesome I haven't played from last year sitting in spring, and I'm already looking at the fall going, oh, the pile of shame groweth. But they're all really good. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about the way things are going this year. Like, I really do think 2019 so far is shaping up to be a very good year for board games.
Well, maybe it's the time of year. Or maybe, for me, my story is a little different, and I don't mean to be casting a shroud here. But so know before I speak that just I've been very busy lately. We had our carpet done in the game room, and for that reason had to move the entire game room out of the game room, and it has been slow in getting built back up. About as slow as it possibly could be. You have to focus on the places where you live, because just putting in these 70-hour weeks with tennis it's been tough to have a life, and I've had to focus just kind of on taking care of my own, myself, I should say, and the game room. Let's just put it like this. It's good that there are other options for locations to play besides my own personal game room, because it currently doesn't exist. The The current gaming selections that I'm seeing offered, though, I mean, I certainly see games that seem to check boxes at different places, but it seems like the games that are really like within my interest sphere, like looking for games that are kind of a mechanically focused, but anything else you can add is something I would appreciate. But something that does something interesting from a Euro mechanics side. With non-direct player interaction and streamlined gameplay, I guess I'm just seeing mainly reprints, second editions, and like small expansions that are coming out. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of what's in the pipeline for coming out. I guess it doesn't feel like it's grown, I should say. Like I'm not saying that it's shrinking or contracting. I'm just saying that I don't believe that I'm seeing as much necessary growth in this aspect. I think that part of that might just be because you're seeing the growth maybe in other areas of the hobby. You're seeing it spread in I just recently visited Europe, and there is, you're like gaming, at least strategy games, like the ones that I'm most drawn to, have been something that have existed for a very long time. And it's and certainly like the hobby continues to grow, but I think that its sort of explosion into the US is continuing to like build up. And I think that like Root is an example of a game that is, I think, reflective of the areas where the hobby is growing the most, and the design philosophies where it's drawing on the strength of those masters, to like compare to like classical painting and stuff, but certainly pushing in a direction that to me feels very much like it is born and of the areas, like I said, like the US where the hobby is continuing to grow and continuing to get larger and larger. Some of the games though that I've seen on Kickstarter recently, like I've had to pass on them because they just seem to like, it seems like the focus on Kickstarter now is not so much like, hey, let's get a game published. It's like, let's get a game that's so deluxeified and so huge that to even get in on it, you have to like invest like $100, and that's
$100 would be cheap for some of the ones I've seen.
And I'm not talking about games here. Like I'm talking about the games that I'm interested in. I'm not talking about like big old miniatures projects because that's always been the case. But I think that, like people are largely just looking at like Kickstarter as a place to, put out a game and its 2 expansions right to start with. And honestly, like that's a lot of risk that I feel like I'm taking on, when I've purchased games, with an expansion and felt like, oh, I'm getting so much content that I play it once or twice. And I think, okay, well, even if I like the game, playing a game with that much content, with that many expansions is something that like, it's going to take a group to grow into this. And I feel like, I'd be happy with just a base game, even if I like it. Of course, there are those times when it's like, I just wish I didn't have this game. And now I've got to find a way to somehow ship a gigantic brick of cardboard, wood, plastic, and the like, and paper, that does not fit into a regular size shipping box, and find a way to somehow like ship that and get somebody who's willing to pay like the $35 shipping, and actually try to recoup some of my initial investment. So
my solution lately has just been to sell them for dirt cheap locally if anyone wants them.
Yeah.
Rather than dealing, honestly.
Yeah.
Or trading them locally in the case of some things, but yeah.
Yeah. And I see what you mean, Joe. Like, I think kind of what you're talking about in some ways is kind of what led me to be slightly less interested in kind of what Euros were doing. Not that like a good Euro game I still like to play, but it just seems like so many of them were like, okay, well, this is these mechanisms twisted this way. Like, I don't know, like it felt a lot.
I don't know, Andy, that like, keep going.
Well, what it seems like to me sometimes is like the Euro side of the hobby kind of goes in fits and starts. So like, when somebody really comes up with something that's innovative, that's truly out of the box different, then like there's a big explosion in like creativity. So like say
deck building comes around and comes to be, like 2008 deck building.
Right, exactly. And then there's a lot of refinement that happens. But then as you hit that end of the refinement phase, it's like the tweaks from game to game are not as big as they were when you were in the innovative phase. And I think some people can get just kind of wore out by that to some extent.
Maybe it's just that it's at a lull right now. I mean, once the next thing, like when that next explosion happens, it's like, oh man, it's great. But maybe it's just that we're here at a point where the innovation is now starting to like push into other corners. And maybe you could consider Root. I mean, like things are becoming so blurred, right? That like sure. Root's even Root's gigantic Kickstarter was for an expansion that is adding some content, but certainly not a metric ton of content. It's as much content as was in the original expansion, which was like released with the game when it first came on the Kickstarter.
There's a little more because there's more automas, but other than that, it's very similar to the first expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, though I'll give a little credit to Leader Games though when they did that is like they didn't put out like stupid amounts of stretch goals with it. Like they did a Kickstarter, I think how, in my opinion, it should be done, which is here's all the stuff. If you kickstart it, rather than having to buy these all piecemeal later, it'll all be included for a cheaper price. But they're like, we're not going to do big stretch goals or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm seeing a push towards that as well, and maybe it is that like we've gotten through the part in the hobby where everybody's like, okay, I've got a box of plastic that goes next to this game that can play just fine without that box of plastic. Now, what do I bring with me to game night?
Well, and that's fair. Like that's been one of my biggest gripes about a lot of Kickstarter goings is like, so many people for a long time, you would get your Kickstarter to be, oh my God, look at all the stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a lot of people in the hobby don't play a game repeatedly enough. Like you're not going to use 90% of that crap for the average person in the hobby, I think at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're just getting in the hobby and you're one, like there are people that will buy like one or two games and play the hell out of them, but I don't think that's the norm at this point. But people are still
have a group that'll support that, and that's very hard to find.
Right. But people are still like, look at all the stuff I got. And like you're never going to use it. Like, it's just crazy amounts of bloat.
Come on now, I really do need 50 HST maps.
Oh yeah, that's different.
Well, that's okay. You do need those 50 HST mats, of course, which you're never going to have time to play them all once, But in that case, though, that you're talking about something that's been around long enough so that those 100 and however many maps that are available, that's been released over the course of almost 20 years now.
Mm-hmm. And so, my Age of Steam map collection, honestly, the entirety of the map collection takes up the size of like one medium-sized Euro game.
Yeah,
because most of them are basically cardstock.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess I could see where you're kind of coming at from that, Joe. Like I think as the hobby's grown, you're kind of seeing a lot of innovation in the far-flung niches of it. As people kind of push into that world, they're like, oh wait, what if I did this? And I think you're maybe seeing a little less innovation in the quote-unquote sort of mainstream area, if that makes sense.
It's potential. The games that have most impressed me recently, just like for to give you an idea of what I think, where I think like Euro design is kind of maybe starting to find a corner, and I don't even know if using the term Euro design is even whatever. Like just the games that I'm most, like non-interactive, right? So like games that have. And I don't say non-interactive, but like interactive, but have sort of the gameplay lies somewhere in that interaction. I think what's happened is that like so many game systems, like in an effort to try to please all gamers at once, they try to, just like a kitchen sink approach in which their game has so many different ways to, engage and interact with it, that everybody's sort of playing their own private game. Nobody's really even in the same like universe is the way it can feel, and yes, you're playing the same thing, and yes, you've got, you're impacting each other's games in like fair in impactful ways, but it seems so subtle. And when like what I think is really lacking is just like something where you can look at somebody else's game and then immediately just kind of understand what they're trying to go for. And that way you're back to interacting with them on like, you know, a basis of like feeling that what you do is like, I feel like sometimes when I'm playing one of these, you know, like don't get me wrong, but I love a lot of the games that we're specifically targeting right now. It's just that I feel like there's just been maybe a bloat of them. And you know, for example, a game I really liked that I played recently, I'll probably review it in the future, is Santa Maria. It's like a dice, you know, dice drafting, and you're sort of building a tableau and then using it to activate your rows and columns in your tableau. It's a really, I thought, a really well executed game. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But you know, like I felt like we were all just sort of playing it and able to do our own little thing and not really be even in the same headspace, you know. And when the scores were announced, it was kind of like, you know, whoever won that game was just, whoo, nobody really saw that coming. You know, it was just kind of like whoa, I had no idea. And I feel like I don't want to start like name dropping on other games, but you know, like I have very positive feelings towards Santa Maria, but I feel like just that's, you know, the direction where I'm finding myself most engaged is a game like Azul that came out last year. I'm really happy that it won Spiel des Jahres, and I really do think that like that sort of a game harkens back to, you know, old school Euro design, when you could just like look at somebody's tableau or look at their table, think this is what they might want, use that to inform your decision so that it's like an integral part of the actual gameplay process and not something that feels like they're being mean to you, you know, like they're actively thinking outside of the game. I just think that, you know, like those forms of interaction that have been really like, you know, just bringing it back to like, how can you put something in front of people that's going to make them, you know, I guess compete with each other, but do so in a way that is new, that feels new and different.
Yeah.
Tackling the game and its systems and the, you know, the bloat of content that came with it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, cause, like I've kind of been down on Euros for a while, but then I found out it's not so much Euros, it's
multiplayer solitaire.
The multiplayer, kind of the way Euros have been becoming. Like Azul, I actually liked a lot. Like I enjoy that game because, you know, I do have to think about what other people are doing, or even setting up a situation that might be more beneficial to me later. But it requires me to get into the headspace of other people. You know, even Azul is lighted, like there is some potential teeth in that game. You know, it's not like quite as stabby as, you know, a lot of them I play these days, but, you know, there is interaction going on. You know, or maybe this is getting at what you're talking about as well, Joe. Like, I look at so many modern Euros and I'm just like, I would just rather play Agricola, because in Agricola, like I feel like pressure, like, you know, other people are going to do things that and it's not like you can just burn somebody's farm down, but you're like, you know, one of the things that hampers me getting much better at that game is like, I haven't gotten to the point where I can pull my eyes off my own game and really start looking at what other people are doing. And that costs me a lot of points in the game. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I play, you know, a lot of other modern games, you know, I played, I don't know if you call it modern at this, God, who knows what counts as like an old game these days. But I played there when Trent, you know, inaugurated his game room, A Feast for Odin, right? And I enjoyed the game. Like I had a good time. I felt no tension. Like, nope. Like I could just do what I wanted and whoever did it the best won. Mm-hmm. And at least for my sensibilities, like I like that tension. Like a game doesn't have to be like I stab you in the face, but I want to feel like I'm playing against somebody.
Mm-hmm. I think, Andy, you're absolutely right in saying that, because I think what's happened is these games are seeking to please people who are like feasibly maybe going to only play them once. like that first play is so incredibly important now in the hobby, more so than it ever has been. And making sure that the game is a smooth first play is, one of the easiest things that you can do is make it so that no player is going to feel, wronged by a misunderstanding of the game system, or by, like a player having the ability to interact with them in a way that they didn't fully understand was possible. And I think that, it's only a game that's as tight and simple as a Sewell and uses a form of interaction that is, when it comes down to it, like, you're not doing anything revolutionary in that game whatsoever. But what it does is it immediately puts players in a space where they can, know what they're going for and know what their opponents are going for, and know how to fight each other. And I think, Andy, even like, people play Agricola, like I would say that, whether or not you like Agricola probably largely depends on when you got into the hobby and whether or not you learn to have a tolerance for, like a couple of, like frustrating first plays, like having frustrating, starting plays, and, even heavier games, like heavier Euro games. Like you mentioned Feast for Odin, which, you could argue about how heavy it actually is, but there's a lot of stuff in that game before you really could play it and know what's going on, and really truly understand the systems. There's a lot going on, but, the heavier games are like that too. And it pains me because I don't want to say anything like throw any games under the bus, because I really do enjoy these games while I'm playing them, but it's not fulfilling a core need, at least of mine, when I play in the hobby. And that's to just, feel like I'm there with other people, right, interacting through the game, and not just, doing our own thing, and waltzing our way through. I feel like, that's what you get in as a gamer that's really just driven to play. And even like a lot of people get started with, with like liking attacking. And I found that like, I didn't like so much the attacking, but rather the indirect forms of interaction. I love interaction, but I love it to be, something that, like where it's more like shifty things that you can do, within the game systems, and things that, like, you can I guess quantify and within the game's mechanics. But
you mean, like, rather than attacking somebody, you take all the food off the fishing space right next to the person that needs food, or else he's going to take a bunch of begging cards.
Yeah, like knowing how many resources you have, knowing how many building resources you have at every point in the game of Agricola for at least the first 4 rounds. Like, that's something that I just, like, I will know without even really looking in front of your board. Like, I know because I'm watching what you're taking. And if I see you take, first of all, if there's 2 reed there, somebody's taking it. I'm paying attention to who's taking it. If there's ever 6 wood, first of all, that's not going to happen the first 5 rounds. That's crazy. If it did, then, well,
someone's being weird if it is.
Yeah. But if somebody gets a chance to take the 3 wood twice, like, they're in a position to where if they also get the 2 reed, like, like, somebody's got a house built here. And what am I going to do to get on top of that? And it just, everything going on in that game, but it's so frustrating to learn. It sucks to learn Agricola. It's so rough that it's not something that I even want to teach people. It's not something that I recommend for any, like, remotely new player. So I totally get, like, why that game doesn't really continue to grow, at least not at the rate that, RIP Never Forget Mayfair, that they wanted it to as well, as soon as they sold Catan. But it's,
well, I guess here's the example, I think, that kind of gets at what you're saying at. And this is not meant to throw somebody under the bus, but to get at what we're talking about, I think the best examples of the modern games that fit kind of the issues we're talking about are Stonemaier games. Flat out. They don't offend anybody. But the thing is, they did that seemingly they don't feel like any of them took any chances either.
Keep the boxes checked. Yeah.
Yep. Like, that's the thing is, everybody's going to find a play of a Stonemaier game okay at worst, like, there's none I outright hate, but there's none I outright love. The one I think about, like, opposite of this was Vlada Shavatal, who said, like, I almost want as many people that hate my game as like my game, because that means I did something interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Vlada, where are you?
He's got something. He's got something heavy coming.
That's what I've heard.
That's right. Yeah. That was what Paul had said. I mean, I guess I was more like, while I was trying to like, I had a few minutes to kill at some point during. Oh yeah, I was on a bus ride to a tennis meet. Anyway, I was like. I was wanting to play a game, and I thought, like, I would have been playing like some sort of an app game, and I'm sure that there are good app games out there, but like I guess that maybe my inner like I guess I'm kind of still lined up. I'm that Apple person, that Apple freak fan that's like lined up at the store for the new iPhone, like 6 weeks before it's come out, and I'm doing that, but I'm doing it while living my life and just not playing any app games until Through the Ages expansion comes out on the app. Like, it's like, I'm like, that's going to be the next app that I play. I feel like nothing will be able to be as good as that game, and nothing is worth my time quite like Through the Ages, which at this point, I really want that expansion to come out. So I'm like quietly boycotting all board game apps until the release of the Through the Ages expansion. Ridiculous point.
I can't wait to see what GMT kicks out on their board game apps this year, though. Yeah. No, but I get what you're saying, man, though, because that's kind of like, I think I felt the same frustration you do now, but I think I felt it a lot sooner and to a much higher degree.
Mm-hmm.
And like where when I really got to notice it is when I play in these weird little like niche areas I found for myself, and I'd come back to, like regular sort of what's in the, I don't know. It's hard for me to fathom and say like the popular part of board gaming, because like board gaming, I don't know. But when I come back to that area, I'm just like, man, like everything kind of looks the same. To some degree or another. Like, it'd be a little different, but so many games I sit down, I'm like, yeah, this is a fine game. I just would have rather played Agricola or Brass or blah blah blah, whatever. Yeah, and so I don't know. It's weird. Like, I don't know fully what's causing it. To some extent, is it just that people are realizing that there's a market, so everyone's like, gotta put out games, like, we're just in this weird cycle of like all this stuff coming out and everyone plays it once or twice, so more stuff comes out, and I don't know. It's weird. I don't really understand exactly why it all happens, but I'm sure a lot of it has to do with like,
part of it is I think part of it is that when you go to a game night, people often have a new game that they want to play, and then you play it once, and then the next week someone else has the new game that they want to play, and then you play it once, and then you go to the next week and someone else has the new game they want to play, and then you play it once. And the problem is like, I mean, you don't want to say, no, I'm not playing your new game so I can play this game I played 4 times before. Right. That feels almost like you're being rude. It feels like a social error. But, and that makes it, I mean, honestly, I haven't brought a game to a game night in like a month. I haven't. Yeah. Because for that very reason, there are always people bringing in games that they want to play, and I feel like, well, I'll just play the game that they want to play, and I'm good to go. So then I don't have to worry about like I'm putting my game ahead of their game. And so I feel like a part of the reason that you have that feeling of you're only playing a game once or twice and moving to the next one is we don't want to be rude to other people that we view as our friends.
Yeah. No. And I'd say also like that shelf of shame idea. You don't want to picture somebody coming home and then looking at that game and thinking, I guess it's another week I won't get to play it.
Yeah, I don't like people to come home from game night feeling sad. And if someone brought their game that they're really looking forward to playing, I want them to get it to the table. So a lot of times, for me at least, that means I haven't brought a game on a Sunday in like a month. And that's the reason. It's like, is there anything I'm burning to get people to play on a Sunday night? And a lot of times the answer is no. And so, I mean, even if I did, I'd probably think twice about it, just simply because it's easier socially to just play the game someone else wants to play.
Except the issue I run into is every time I try to do that, then everyone's like, oh, I brought this, but whatever. And I'm like, oh God, fine, we're playing this.
people don't bring games on Sundays if they don't want to play them.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. You got to recognize that someone's not going to put a game in their game bag if they aren't bringing it with the intent of wanting to play it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just more like there's enough socially awkward gamers that they don't want to be they want someone else to like give them permission to play it instead of just saying we're playing it. And I'm the opposite. I'm just like, we're playing it.
What I usually do is I look at all the games everyone else has brought, and I think, which one would I most like to play? And I'm like, hey, let's put that on the table and play it. That has been the approach I've been taking for the last month, and it's worked reasonably well. I just haven't brought anything.
Yeah. Sure.
So,
yeah, it's kind of crazy, but I don't know. That's as much as I say there's a good year for games and whatnot that are coming out, part of me always wonders, like, is there going to be a point that a bunch of gamers wake up and they're like, why the crap am I only playing like one game once or twice instead? You know what I mean? Like at some point, just collectively, everyone like, what the hell are we doing? Or I don't know, like maybe all the board game media and all of that feeds into that to some extent. So it's like, how can you make a living in board games unless you can keep that churn going? You know what I mean?
It's true, and I do think that continuing to consume board games is like what's enabled the hobby to grow so huge. So like part of the reason, Andy, that you're getting games coming out in your interest area and I'm getting them in my interest area period is because most people are playing them once, so it enables them to play way more games because they're only playing them once.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The sad part is, like, I fully realize that. But do you think that actually prevented me from like buying games? No. Because at some point, even if you know that, you still look at a game and you're like, I'll just get that one. Then the next month. But that one looks really cool too.
Yeah.
It's almost a weird situation on that too, but I get what you're saying. Like, it does seem like there's a lot of growth, I think, in the industry looking at what's coming. But on my end, being in the weird fringes, like the last 2 years has been like exponentially insane growth in the fringes. Like, where 18xx is now compared to where I started playing it, like, way more out there.
I think it's because, I think the hobby as a whole has grown, and I think people gradually progress, and as they discover things like that, they realize this game exists that scratches my itch, and I didn't know such a thing existed. If you have, I think the whole hobby is like 10 times bigger than it was a decade ago. There's people, I was at something recently that was very, very not gamery at all, and the topic came up, and there was like 5 or 6 people there that were at least talking about gateways that they played. This would not have happened like 5 or 10 years ago. This would have been like Monopoly. And that's not what I was getting. People talking about like Ticket to Ride and common gateways, but they at least knew what I was talking about, and they were aware that this was a hobby, and they could talk about a few of them that they had played, and a couple of them were saying even fairly surprisingly heavier games. One of them talked about playing Star Wars Rebellion with his brother. And I was like, and this was just like a random, like, social normal event. It wasn't like board game night. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, this hobby's bigger than I'm realizing. It's like there's a lot of just seemingly, this isn't like a niche hobby so much anymore. And then, so if you multiply, if everything has grown by 10x, all the gateways have, there's going to be the same proportion of people gradually falling into all the niches. They're all exploding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like even probably 2-3 years ago, I had middle school students talking about Ticket to Ride even.
Yeah. I do think there's probably some, certainly potentially some of the areas, will not see as much growth just because culture is certainly like at the base of any driving force. And like what I mean by culture is like, there's like what our culture tends to prioritize. Like there's certain game styles that just you don't see the same support for anymore. You know, you don't see like.
Are you saying there's not a huge growth in like extremely large 10-hour hex encounter war games?
There might be, dude, but it does seem like, yeah, I was gonna say, like, it does seem like, you know, there are places, you know, that maybe war games, because that is kind of like was the big thing that was in my head, and I'm certainly like I'm saying that, you know, not to try to push the hobby in any one direction, but just, you know, maybe give voice to what maybe some people are thinking, like, well, your hobby's growing, but mine, you know, and hopefully, you know, there still is at least.
I think war games are growing just fine, but the old giant hex encounter ones, yeah, that's a much smaller growth than war games.
Yeah, that's got a much slower growth curve. I appreciate them, but I don't. They're very. I mean, yeah, I think anything that's like a 10-hour game is never going to grow very fast.
No.
Especially when there's that many great. I mean, there's a lot of great, deep, compelling games at a much shorter time frame than that. But I think every niche there is seeing growth right now. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. It's just crazy. But yeah, no, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, that definitely turned into more. Like, there was more to talk about than I anticipated. So let's get back to the excitement then. Let's get back to what are we looking forward to playing.
Now the hype games that are going to come out later in 2019.
Oh crap! I realize that I'm going to hype games. I'm going to hype a game that's kind of like a continuation of a so, all right. Well, I'm really excited that Lorenzo and Magnifico is going digital, but you know, I hate it because it shines a mirror on something about technology and just current technology that really frustrates me. And competition is a great thing, but you know what? I really want to be able to play my board games on my device of choice, and I don't like it when the device of choice that I use is something that is so integrated into my life that it's like my phone, and I don't like it that there has to. And you know, here I am talking from an iPhone perspective, right? I'm talking about this from an iPhone perspective. So every Android user out there, hate me. You like, I deserve for you to hate me because. You know, like I just come at it from this angle of like, well, if it comes to phone, I'll play it. And I don't even think like if it comes to iPhone, I think if it comes to phone, it's going to come to my phone because, you know, my phone's an iPhone and it rhymes, right? That's just what everybody says now, dude. No, I'm sorry, everybody. Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. It wasn't a joke you were ready for. I get it. Wow, and that's an even better thing to say. I realize I'm just digging my hole now. All right, so the thing is, like, Lorenzo Magnifico is doing what a lot of board games do, which is come to like the PC and Mac crowd first, you know, like first being developed and released there. And it, you know, I guess it was just one of those things where like to get a small expansion deck, like a physical expansion deck mailed to me, I had to also buy this digital version of the game. And I have to spend like 10 euros on the digital version of the game. And I know that's like $5 cheaper than what's going to be when it actually comes out. But it's like, I just don't, you know, I have so many digital games right now. Like so many digital games have been released like within the last 5 to 10 years ago. And they are all available for like 99 cents on Humble Bundle every 5 minutes. And so you pick up like 2 of those things. And then I get this in my mind. That's my shelf of shame that I have to play before I'm going to play something new. And so I'm not going to get something on the PC unless, you know, I go back to PC gaming, which is something I haven't done in a while. And yeah, it's just like,
the other thing, like, I'm always baffled by the concept of doing like a Steam first, because I'm just like, if I'm gonna sit down at my PC anyway, that's probably not where what I'm gonna load up first. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like that's the big thing I'm thinking is like I like playing these types of board games and these small apps that just go on the go, or they play in a web browser that are just super easy, right, and can be played on like any device that don't need any sort of thing. Like if I sit down in front of my computer, just like you said, Andy, I have like, you know, some pretty big games. I haven't even played Civ 6 more than like a tutorial, right? Like that game right there by itself. Okay, yeah, shame. I get it.
Shame.
My video game shelf of shame may be worse than my board game shelf of shame at this point.
Steam sales, yes, indeed.
Yeah, Steam sales are bad. I started blocking all of their emails with sales because I'm just like, I can't buy anymore.
No, I have.
Well, my problem is that here's my honest problem. I'll tell you the truth. I have like a whole bunch of games in my Steam library, but every time I sit down and pop open Steam and think I'm going to play a computer game for the next hour or two, I play one of the 3 games every time. So, like, why do I have any more than these 3 games that I play every time? I play Civ 6, I play Stellaris, I play Factorio. That's 99% of my computer game plays right there. Yeah, nothing else. I don't play anything else if I'm going to play a computer game. So why have any of the others?
Mm-hmm. And Lorenzo and Magnifico is a great example of a game that I really enjoy, and I really do want to be able to play it, but it's one that would exist in a space where it would never be one of 3 games that got 99% of my game time. It just is not that type of game that has that much long-lasting appeal. It's like one of 5 games that are by a design team that I enjoy playing, I want to own, but I like, playing them a certain amount that's just not enough to justify the amount that it's competing for. So, and on top of that, the deck of physical cards that it's supposed to come with advertises itself as being like more interactive and in a way where you're like, you can actually like sort of throw twigs in other people's, in the gears of other people's engines. Because Lorenzo Magnifico, had the worker placement aspect of interaction, but it didn't really have much else in terms of the interaction, just a very tight board that tightened up. Now you're going to see cards that are like, every time I activate my tableau, you're getting hit with this. And I kind of was like, I think they might have a reason they're releasing this as a Kickstarter, like kind of a Kickstarter exclusive thing, basically a Kickstarter exclusive thing. It might be available at some level elsewhere. So I guess my hype is as it turns into be sometimes more of a trying to look under,
Why did you have to tell me that this digital Kickstarter had a physical deck?
Yes.
I'm now looking at it, I didn't know that I just thought it was a digital game. I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I'm now interested in what the physical deck has, so I'll probably be looking into that. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Yep. Well, moving on, while Trent, really quickly goes over that, Andy, you have a train game, it looks like.
Yeah, like as little of a train game as you're ever gonna find. Yeah, so my hype is honestly, it's a game I've been looking forward to, but it is also from someone I consider a friend online I talk to a lot, is Penny Rails. So this is coming out from Button Shy. So if you haven't ever seen Button Shy yet, they do these little wallet games. They're like 18 or so cards.
They're all 18 cards. I'm pretty big fan of this company. So right. Yeah, they're all 18.
Yeah, so they do some really phenomenal things with them. So Penny Rails is from Travis from Low Player Count. It was one of his, I think, early attempts at game design or something like that. I don't know that for sure, but the first one I heard him talking much about, because he entered Button Shy's contest, because they do a contest every so often where you just make a game out of only 18 cards. You submit it, they pick winners. I don't think he was a winner at the time, but they liked it enough that they picked it up anyway. And so it's an 18 card train game. And from what it looks like, you can set these cards down, and there's different like color coded routes on these cards, and you can lay them in such a way that you can actually cut people off, because you're not allowed to place a card, I guess, in a way that it overlaps another card. So if you lay your track right, you can sort of do the cutting off aspect of like the route building of a lot of train games. Apparently the shares will be represented by loose coins you have laying around that you can use, which is kind of fascinating. But I don't know, like, I like Travis a lot. He's a good guy, so I want to support him, but I'm also really curious as to how the crap this works, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, I was honestly curious about it when he first mentioned a few ideas about it he was working on, like a year or so ago, maybe it was. And I'm going to hype it because, this will drop like next week. And the guy who runs Button Shy basically got on and said, yeah, we will be doing our pre-orders for this next week. Looking at delivering it in May, I think he said. So yeah, like I got Pentacork from them, and that's a fun little solitaire game. This is apparently 2 players, which is also kind of fascinating because I think I feel fairly safe in saying most train games do not play well at 2 players. And so if this one does, and 18 cards and some odd change, I don't know. It not only, like I said, is Travis a friend, but this, like, I would have bought this anyway just because it sounds interesting and unique while still being conformist to trains. I don't know, but if that makes sense. But honestly, yeah. So the game is Penny Rails.
Trains. I like that, Andy. That's a nice, like, little touch, little self-criticism. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. It's part of the reason I like trains as a theme, because you know you can expect certain things, but yet I'm looking for innovation in my expectations. I don't know. But anyway,
as long as it doesn't innovate too much.
Too much, right? Yeah. We're gonna make a train game. And I don't know. Anyway, but it's Penny Rails by Button Shy Games. So looks to be, like I said, if this drops next week, they may have started pre-orders, or they definitely will be really soon. And yeah, they're little wallet games. So this is, I don't know. They're usually like what, Trent? Do you know, like, they're like $10, maybe.
Yeah, they're
20.
10 to 12 for the game, depending on like the specifics of it. Yeah, but they have a whole bunch of games. They're all 18 cards. They're usually $10 to $12. That's generally what they do. They come in these little like wallet things. They're like about as small footprint as you can possibly get for a game.
Yeah.
Minimal packaging. Yeah, it's they're what they are. They don't expect this to take up a lot of space on your shelf. I am a huge fan of what Button Shy is doing, and I have several of their little wallet games.
Yeah, they're great.
Up.
Yeah, they're great for like little portable things to take on a trip or play at the restaurant or something.
Our copy of Sprawlopolis looks like it's been beat up, and we might actually get a second. It looks like it's been through. It's not looking good. I mean, it's still playable, but yeah, we may just be getting a second copy because the old one's looking not good. And I mean, that's an example. We played an 18-card game that much.
Yeah, I remember Sprawlopolis getting a lot of play at game night anytime there was like, you know, we need a filler. Sprawlopolis.
Yeah, it's a good little filler. That's what it is. It's a really good little filler.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So anyway, that's my hype. Looking forward to it. Definitely going to buy it.
Cool. That's Penny Rails. And now, Trent, have you decided if you're going to buy Lorenzo?
Not sure yet. I mean, I kind of like that physical deck, but I don't know if it's worth it or not. I mean, I didn't even know that was there, and it was not on my radar. I probably would have, when the next time I had like some Steam credit or something, gotten the Lorenzo game, but I wasn't like really thinking about it too much. But the physical deck is making me, I don't know. I'll think about it. And it's not very expensive either, so whatever, not a big deal. I'm gonna go on with my hype. And I'm going to talk about a friend of the podcast, Cole Worley, who has been on an earlier episode of this podcast. He's basically designed 4 games, and I've deeply liked all of them. John Company, and Infamous Traffic, Pax Pamir, and Root. I've liked all 4 of those quite a bit. They're all very different, distinctive, high player interaction games, have really weird game mechanisms in them. They all are games that I have either replayed or really wanted to replay, or both. Quite a bit. I'm very intrigued by his game design. His next game that he's coming out with is he's tentatively calling Saga. And I've heard about this from a few different places, and I kind of just wanted to give it. He hasn't really talked about it in depth yet, but what he said enough is really interesting to me. The big thing he's been trying to aim for with this game was a game where effectively each copy of it winds up, it's not going to be a legacy game, but each copy of it evolves over time, so that if you play it enough, each copy will begin to feel differently. I think it has to do a lot to do with the ordering of decks and stuff like that. So, so that the way he was describing it was, he says, let's say you play a game 10 times, you play it 15 times, and then you decided to ship your copy to someone else. They'll be happy to get it because it's not a legacy game and it hasn't been modified. But their experience of playing the game will feel differently than if they had bought a new copy or if they had played someone else's copy. They're going to feel like a fairly distinctive game. And knowing his history as a game designer and some of the stuff he's come out with, and that's his idea that he's really trying to tackle on this, I think intrigued is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
I want to see how that works. That sounds really interesting to me. And I mean, like I said, I know the types of games that he has made in the past. He's made some very, very clever games. He's not shied away from player interaction. He's not shied away from seriously weird mechanisms. And yeah, I want to see what this turns out to be. I'm very, very interested. Obviously, he works for Leader Games. This is going to be a Leader Games title at some point in the future. It doesn't mean that that's their next title or even the title after that. Who knows? But that's what his big thing that he's working on now, and I'm very, very interested.
Yeah, like from what I remember hearing him talk about this on some interviews, is as Root was kind of his answer to the things he didn't like about coin games. Saga is his answer to things he doesn't like about legacy games.
Yep.
So
the whole gaming world benefits when Cole Worley doesn't like something.
Yeah, basically. Well, see, his biggest issue, he said, with legacy games is that the gameplay during the game can be very emergent, very interesting. But then when you get to the actual legacy component, it is often very scripted. Like, read this text, this happens. So basically, he said something, he's like, I want the legacy component of the game to be as emergent as the actual gameplay. And so, like he said, one of his goals is like no scripted text, no flavor text, no stories are read.
Wow.
So what I was explaining this to a friend of mine, and he's like, this is going to go one of two ways. He says this is going to be hot garbage in the next Seafall, or it's going to be like the next Gloomhaven and Enormous. He says I couldn't tell you which it's going to be, but. All I know should be interesting either way.
All I know is the last two times I thought I knew better than Cole Worley. Like Root, I was like, I don't need Root. I got coin games. Root will just be coin games for the peasants, basically. And then I played Root, and I'm like, mistakes were made. I need to go buy all the Root now. Or like with PAX Pamir 2nd edition, right? I thought I have the first edition, that's the serious gamers PAX Pamir, and then my wife said, oh, you can get a Kickstarter for your birthday, so I did PAX Pamir 2nd edition. I'm like, I screwed up with Root, I don't really want to screw up with another game. And then I saw him live stream it on Heavy Cardboard. I'm like, yep, I'm really glad I backed that.
Nice.
So if there, if any designer has earned a degree of take a leap of faith and trust, Cole's in the top of that list for me.
He's based on his 4 designs that he has right now, and my feelings on all of them are extremely positive. He's one of the very few designers. If a game came out and I knew nothing else other than the designer's name in the box, I would back his game.
You hear that, Cole? Make a crappy game just so that Trent can be proven wrong at this point in time.
But his other 4 games, I love them all tremendously in different ways. I will say it took me a while to come around on Infamous Traffic. It did. But I have come around on it. I actually really, really admire that game now. I really like it. And the other 3 I liked right off the bat. So
yeah. Oh, did you? I don't know if I ever told you that Joe, that in Infamous Traffic, Uli Bledeman from Spielworks, that's like in his top 5 now.
Huh.
Loves it.
Wow.
Yeah, or the other one, an additional hype, but I think it's a ways down the road. I am super psyched about the one Cole Worley's doing with Jordan Draper.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, about the capsule hotels in Tokyo. I'm just like, capsule hotels, Jordan Draper, Cole Worley.
So So you know how like Tokyo Metro was like the larger of those three, but it's still a pretty small game. And then the next one is the Tokyo Fish Market one, and the second one, the third one is Tokyo Capsule Hotel, and Corey's involved in it.
Freaking insta-buy for me.
That's cool.
No questions. I will hit that pledge immediately.
That's something to be excited about. There's a lot of hype. I see why you guys are so like, just what's happened though, and why there's all this excitement is probably that, game designers themselves feel like they have a place to be able to actually earn their living and pursue.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
They can pursue their own. I mean, like, just having traveled to a different country, going to, like seeing how art developed throughout the, in Amsterdam with their museums that they have there. Artists could design for a living, they could actually like paint for a living. And that was kind of a new thing that took like golden ages to make happen. And, they could do it in Amsterdam, not working for, the only place like either the church or royalty. They could do it working for common people. And now I think, we're seeing just like, what seems like a continuation of that, just, how many different trickle downs are we talking about? But yeah, it's pretty exciting and cool. And I guess keep playing games once because it keeps this happening.
I want to cycle back right now. I think it's a good time to tie a lot of things together in this episode. So we were talking about how much the hobby has exploded in the last several years. I think one of the big benefits of the hobby exploding in the last several years, we've reached a point where quirky designers that are doing really interesting things that previously would have been making print and plays in their basement can now actually make a living in this hobby and have enough of their fan base, their 1,000 true fans or whatever, to be able to make a living doing this. And Cole is an example of this. Cole would not have a job in the game publishing industry 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. They wouldn't exist. There would not be enough people out there to support him developing and designing games and putting them out there and do this as a full-time job 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first, like it says on Board Game Geek, that the first full-time game designer was Wolfgang Kramer, and that's not that long ago. He still designs games, right? People that work with him are
Sid Saxon, who designed a ton of amazing games back in the 60s and 70s, couldn't do it full time.
No.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Yep. Oh, and as quirky ones that can make a living at it, Tom Russell, I also love your games.
Well, he's also able to do it because he's also publishing them. But yeah, I agree with you. Tom Russell makes some interesting games.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a very positive note to end on. And it's been an unexpected episode and an unexpected joy to be able to spend it with you guys.
And we sucked up to Cole Worley and Button Shy Games a whole bunch. And yeah, all good.
Please send all review copies to Ames, Iowa.
Send your review copies and your checks to Ames, Iowa. Yeah.
Yes, this is right. And first, though, a big shout out to everybody who's joined us in on the chat as the episode's gone on. I'm currently just reading you from the bottom up here. We've got Norm, Murr, Tony, David, and Paul. And if I missed you, I'm sorry. I think I already said, John is here as well. John was here and just added a ton to this chat. And a lot of it, some of those things, come and enjoy reading that chat because some of it we weren't saying specifically on purpose. But anyway, it was just an absolute joy to read those comments and to see those, especially considering that this episode was canceled, and this has been a fun canceled episode, guys. So maybe it was more loose because of that.
I put just as much prep work into this one as I do all our episodes.
Well, thanks. What a hard worker you are, Andy. Well, one thing Andy does work at though is the print and plays and the rules, the references that are for the games that he makes. So there's a time that Andy does work. So
no, there isn't.
Yeah, actually, never mind. I don't know why I said that. Andy doesn't deserve that. So
the house cleaning I had to do today says otherwise.
Well, you made it here. You did. I suppose that. Well, I won't tell Christina if I see her. But anyway, it sounds like Andy, you've got some things to do. So maybe you'll be up until 5 a.m. again. Who knows?
Yep.
Take care, everyone. Have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.